Hello. Well, I don't want to interrupt your lunch. I hope you are enjoying your food or dessert or coffee or whatever you have in front of you. But we have a lunch speaker, which I assure you will be not only useful and enlightening, but also will be entertaining. Farzad Naeim doesn't need, again, everybody I introduced doesn't need much introduction. So he's also another one who I really don't need to say much. I would rather give him extra time on the podium because his talks are always fun to listen to. And with that, please, Farzad Naeim.
I'm a short guy, so I have to bring this down. So. Hello, thank you. Good afternoon. I hope you're having a good time here. Thank you for inviting an immigrant from an S-hole country to give your luncheon talk. Basically, for full truth and disclosure, there is probably nothing that I'm going to say that you either already don't know or haven't listened to or are not going to listen to during these 2 days. Since we have a bunch of colleagues who are probability buffs, I'm going to change that deterministic estimate to a probabilistic one. There's 99.9% chance that you are not going to learn anything new from what I'm saying. Now, having said that, I won't be offended if you take a nap. I urge them to start this early so that you are still having lunch, so the chances of you taking a nap is going to be less. So with that, let's see, where are the controls here? Everyone that has either bought a house or sold one, should I use this to click forward and backward? This one here? Okay, backward. Everyone who has sort of dealt in real estate, bought a house or sold a house, knows that the three most important things in buying a house is location, location, location. And me being an earthquake engineer, 5 months before the Northridge earthquake, bought a brand new house. Guess where? Northridge. Wow, this is not moving. Let's see, I'm going to put this in the present to speakers so that I know where we are. Because this is sort of confusing. I want to see one screen. I don't want to see forward, backward thing. Presenter mode, yeah.
Okay. This one? This guy? The presenter, yeah, that's what you want.
Yeah, I want, that's okay, I'll follow it. That's okay, yeah, very good. All right, so this is the house. We bought this 5 months before the Northridge earthquake in Northridge. We were pretty excited about it. These houses came basically a new house on a dirt. So you had to build, the backyard, the block walls and stuff. So being very proud of the new house, I actually drew put the drawings together for the block walls I wanted to be built, interviewed the guy that was supposed to do the block wall, and told him exactly how this is to be built. And I was there on the day, a few days that he was actually constructing these block walls. So when the Northridge earthquake happened, the day after, I went to the backyard and I saw this. Wow, this is lesson number 1. Workmanship and inspections are important. So I saw this. I said, what the hell happened? I went and looked closer and I saw that something is funny. The concrete is in one cell and the rebar alone is in the next cell. I never imagined the contractor can be that stupid. So I called him in, and I said, what the hell happened? Why did you do this? I was watching you. I didn't think you are going to pour the concrete here and rebar on the other one. So I didn't come up front and look at it. And he gave me a very educated lecture on on structural engineering concepts. And he said, I did this because I wanted to do you a favor. Because the cell with the concrete was strong enough already. So I put the rebar in the next one so that that one is strong too. And I said, thank you very much. Please don't practice structural engineering from this point on. Yeah, here it is. That's for you. The rebar alone in a cell and concrete in the next one. Lesson number 2 that I learned from Northridge earthquake is that in order to pass sound engineering judgment, you should be emotionally detached from the outcome. The day after Northridge earthquake, I probably looked at 50 to 60, maybe 70 houses in the neighborhood. And I easily passed judgment, this one is okay, do this, be careful, don't go there. There were a couple that I said don't go in and stay out because they were separating the second floor from the first floor. But when it came to my own house, I really couldn't pass a sound engineering judgment because I would look at it and say, it looks okay, but hey, this is my kid. That's my wife. Should I? Shouldn't I? So I actually asked someone else to come in and pass a judgment on my house. So that's lesson number 2 that I got from Northridge earthquake. Lesson number 3 is PGA, peak ground acceleration, is important, but it is not that important. My example is this famous station, Seismic station, in a nursery in Tarzana, which is close to the epicenter of Northridge earthquake. And this particular station accelerometer graph showed a 1.78 g horizontal acceleration down there. And when you go around that area, there was no damage that would really correspond to 1.78 g is basically end of the universe if it is widespread. But there was no damage to correlate to this. So I talked to my Seismic friends, and at first they thought that something is wrong with this instrument, and then they realized that actually there is nothing wrong with the instrument. If you want to get a little fancier, you can look at the velocity of it. You're looking at 5G spectral acceleration. That's a lot of spectral acceleration. But there was no damage. I don't know exactly what happened. I talked to people. They say probably there was some lensing effect around this or whatever. But what I learned from this was that, I look at the PGA, I respect it, but I'm not going to put all my stock in what PGA reading in one place is. Lesson number 4 is that when you think you know it all, think again. I vividly remember, I believed in it. A lot of other people believed in it, that after sliced bread and mom's apple pie, the steel moment-resisting frame is the best thing that has happened to human civilization. Everybody believed that. I vividly remember that when Mike Engelhardt published his paper, I think it was in December 1993, which said something is wrong or fishy with the steel moment frames that we are using. And I vividly remember that everybody poo-pooed him, and some people actually were thinking that he should resign his academic position. It took just a couple of months for him to be proven right. So that's just one lesson. There are a lot of other things that we don't know. So we shouldn't be overconfident in what we think we know. Lesson number 5 is you better act when momentum is on your side. People have short memories. After an earthquake, you probably have 6 to 8, 9 months, maximum a year, to get things that you want to get done through the politicians because public is on your side. 2 years later, everybody is watching their favorite, TV show, and they are thinking about putting a roof there and making a new kitchen. No one thinks about earthquake after a couple of years is behind them. So we have to act really harder than what we did. We did some good stuff. For example, for SMRF, we started looking at the buildings that were subjected to more than 0.25 G ground acceleration, but we really didn't look at other buildings. We have high-rise buildings in downtown LA that are SMRF, and they have never been inspected. So we should, I think, in retrospect, this is Monday morning quarterbacking, of course, we should have pushed harder. Maybe next time we should. Rather than waiting 20 years and going for soft story ordinance, maybe that was the time after the Northridge Meadows that we should have pushed hard for it. After waiting 10, 15 years going for non-ductile concrete ordinances, that was the time that we really have pushed for it. I mean, maybe it's wishful thinking, but I really think we should capitalize when there is an earthquake, and we should use the audience so that we can improve their safety. So that was lesson number 5. Lesson number 6 is non-structural stuff. I'm saying stuff because I'm a polite person. I don't want to use the other word that starts with S. Is important. The example is this Sylmar County Hospital building that most of you are familiar with. This was built as a replacement for the Olive View Hospital, which was basically partially collapsed during the 1971 San Fernando earthquake. So the decision was made to build this building at the same location of the other building and build it in a way that would actually stay operational after an earthquake. So this used a fancy structural system, steel plates embedded in concrete shear walls, and saw the earthquake. It saw actually pretty good size motion at the base and everywhere else, as you will see. It saw 0.8 G at the base, which got amplified to 1.6 G at the roof. These are big numbers. I can promise you that this building was not designed to take 90% of its weight in base shear, but it saw it and it survived it. There was minor, if any, structural damage in the building. But nevertheless, they had to evacuate it. The hospital was shut down for quite a few weeks, a few months, because of this is happened to the content. It was not functional anymore. That's another one. God knows whose file is whose on that pile there. Unless your mother-in-law's file is one of those, you don't want the files to look like that. Lesson number 7 is seismic instrumentation is a damn good investment. It really pays 100 times over the value of initial investment. And by a seismic instrumentation, I don't mean code instrumentation of putting one sensor here, one sensor in the middle of the building, and maybe one at the roof, because that's not going to give you a lot of information. But sort of extensive instrumentation, the way Seismic does it, the way USGS does it, the way we are doing it for tall performance-based design tall buildings in Los Angeles and San Diego, that type of investment, which is a very small investment compared to the cost of a structure, I mean, it is less than 0.5% of the cost of total construction. You can see a lot of goods. I'm just showing you some example based on me doing this as a hobby, picking up results of instrumentation and plugging it into some of the fragility functions or things that I know to tell you what kind of information you can get immediately after an earthquake if you have a building instrumented and that data is available. I mean, the stuff that I'm showing you is elementary. There are people in the audience that are using, hybrid stuff, and they cook it up to computer models, and there are a lot of other fancy ways of doing this. But at the simplest level, the way I'm doing it with a bunch of very simple fragilities and just data obtained from the sensors, you can get very useful information. Let me give you a few examples. Going back to the same Sylmar County Hospital, and basically using something like hazardous fragilities, just simple hazardous fragilities. You can say that this building was not really, this is a 6-story building, this is the east-west, this is the north-south. You see that even based on hazardous fragility stuff, this building didn't see severe structural damage. Now, if I look at non-structural components using the same simple fragilities, just using the sensor data, you see that this building is in big trouble, non-structurally. And this can be available 30 seconds after the earthquake. If you want to get fancier, you can go to stuff like FEMA 356 fragility functions. And then, if you plug in the values that you are getting from the sensors and the fragilities for suspended ceilings on the first floor of this building, you see that there is a 75% chance of some of the files are displaced and fallen, which is, I think, what happened. Or 70% chance that on the 6th floor, your floor cabinets are in the status that you are seeing. Or your computers and desktop stuff are 90% chance of not functioning. These are very useful information that you can have within a few seconds or minutes after the earthquake. And we should really, as a community, push for extensive instrumentation in at least sizable buildings that we build, public hospitals, any important facility, any large building, or any even shopping mall that a lot of people are in there. We should push for instrumentation to go forward. And again, using simple ones, you go to downtown LA, this is Northridge earthquake. If you just look at the sensors, plug it into one of these simple fragilities for this 52-story building in downtown LA, you see that, all the chances of severe damage are almost non-existent. There is possibility of a slight damage. And if you are really looking for damage, please go to the middle height of the building, because the chances of having damage there is more than having it either up or down. So these are useful information to have. That drywalls, for example, there is a chance that you have some damage there. Or another building at a hospital, in a hotel in Universal City, and again, you see the same thing. And I'm showing this to show you that this is not building dependent. It is not that I got lucky with Sylmar County Hospital. Every building that I picked, and I used instrumentation data with some simple engineering concept, fragilities, whatever, you can get really useful information out of it. Lesson number 8 is a lesson that actually Professor John Wallace talked about. And that is, ductility is important, but is not everything. And, you can't have a column more ductile than this, but everything else has to work with it, as John said. You need deformation compatibility and things. So ductility we need, but if you are ductile, you are not necessarily safe. Lesson number 9, performance of diaphragms is essential. Lateral resisting elements don't do anything if you don't deliver forces to them. This is a 3-story parking structure at the Northridge Fashion Center. Actually, my wife used to take my then 4-year-old daughter to that mall every day and parked exactly there. The earthquake happened early in the morning, so nobody was shopping and nobody was killed. But from the shape of this wall, you can see that it didn't really see any forces. And the same thing, you know, you have to, diaphragms should be intact, they should not deform too much, they should not separate from the walls and things like that. All of us know that, you know, the pre-Northridge steel moment resisting frame buildings, they got cracked up, seeing most of them much less forces than we anticipated that they can safely take. But this is one side of the story. The other side of the story is this sort of partially covered in this lesson number 10. Do not over-rely on design calculations. They might not tell you the entire story. You know, one side of the story from SMRF. This is another side of the story. These are 3 buildings. All 3 buildings, you know, that's a Fairbank 10-story residential building. There's a shear wall building. It saw 34% G at the base. It was designed for 14%. This is ultimate strength design for 14% of the base shear. So it saw way more than twice what it was designed for, but the level of damage was insignificant. The 3-story commercial building is a shopping center in Century City. It's a steel braced frame. During the Northridge earthquake, it saw about 50% G at the base. It was designed for 18%. No structural damage. Another one, the 19-story office building, it's a steel braced frame and SMRF building in Century City again. It saw 34% G, it was designed for 8. It had a couple of buckled braces near the roof, and that was it. So I won't rely on design calculations to tell me the status of the building. I have to go look at it. Lesson number 11, take a little time and ponder before you respond. After an earthquake, if you are a practicing engineer, you are going to be swamped with the calls. Everybody who you ever worked for, every client, potential client, their neighbors, and their friends are going to call you. So you are going to get thousands of calls, literally, within a couple of days or a couple of hours. And you need to decide how you are going to respond. How do you prioritize? Which one you go to, which one you don't. At that time, this was not easy to determine because we didn't have, for example, shake map. And then the damaged area is not necessarily where you think it is. It's not necessarily close to epicenter. You know, we had areas of damage in West LA, in Santa Monica, which are far from, you know, the epicenter of Northridge earthquake. So right now, before I answer any calls, I look at the shake map. Because shake map sort of tells me where are the areas that I need to be vigilant about. If somebody calls me from an area that is very green over there in the shake map, I tell the guy to wait another day. I see you tomorrow. If the guy is in the real red zone, that's where I'm going first. So, lesson number 12 is be careful how you promote seismic safety. And I think we sort of fall on either side of this sword many times. I mean, I have and others do. If you sort of exaggerate the seismic hazard or risk, if you tell people, you know, an earthquake magnitude 8.1 is going to come here and 300,000 people are going to die and 60% of the buildings are going to collapse, then people say, why should I bother? We are going to die anyhow. So they don't do anything. If you undersell it, they say everybody is going to be fine, it's not going to be a problem, this is Los Angeles, this is not Taiwan, we are going to be fine, and maybe, you know, there's going to be a little bit of damage here, a little bit of damage there, people get confident, then they don't do anything either. So you have to strike a right balance that move people into action. Exaggerating hazard doesn't do it, and underestimating it doesn't do it either. It's a very difficult balance, but we have to find it to be able to be successful. And the last lesson, lesson number 13, is the time has come to move on from traditional objectives. This objective that we have had for many years, that we designed for life safety, which we know as engineers, but 90% of the public doesn't know. They think that we are designing earthquake-proof buildings. I vividly remember in Chile that it had a remarkable good performance of engineered structures. And I thought, when I saw that, I thought that structural engineers in Chile are going to be treated like heroes. And I was so wrong. I mean, people hated anybody had anything to do with engineering, because they thought that because they were sort of by ordinance of the government, earthquakes, new buildings had to be earthquake-proof. So the earthquake came and building was damaged. Even if the damage was minor, the owner thought he was or she was sold a lemon. Everybody was unhappy. For one of the best performances of structural systems that I have seen in my life, given a major earthquake. So there needs to be a balance between what we are doing and what the perception of people is of what we are doing. If people really want buildings that are repairable, that are functional, if they really need a community which is resilient and can go back to work after an earthquake, we can't afford to have a $40 billion, $80 billion damage when we face a magnitude 6.7 earthquake. I mean, that just doesn't cut it. This might be good for somewhere else. It is not good for a major metropolitan area in a very advanced country. Our objectives have to go up. We need to design for repairability and resilience. And with that, I cut my stuff short. Thank you. I told you I'm not going to tell you anything you don't know, but in case someone of you about the things that you know have a questions, feel free. Any questions? Yes, expected that one.
You mentioned we should encourage people to do instrumentation,
yes.
But are you going to encourage that without funding, or people don't want to spend money if they don't have to? So.
It's a very good, actually, question. We do it in Los Angeles, for example. Most of the tall buildings that are being designed these days are designed using performance-based design. And as a part of performance-based design, we require them to do extensive instrumentation. They can't do it if they don't do instrumentation. I believe that we can educate people by showing them the benefits of instrumentation that they would get. I don't think you can force people and just tell them that every building has to go do this, so that every 3-story building owner has to put instrumentation in. But there is so much advantage that they can get from this instrumentation. Not only for us, this stuff for instrumentation, they can use it, mix it up with other security systems and stuff. I think there is a market there for smart structures. And I think this should be treated as a marketable thing and create an environment that population is susceptible and receptive to. I think that's the way it should go. Any other questions? This is a tough one. This I want to dodge.
So, Farzad, you said that a family member shopped daily at the Northridge Fashion Center.
Yeah.
Did the collapse of that parking structure have any impact on your household budget? And is there another lesson that we can add to your speech?
That number, that question assumes that I was either in control or aware. Which I was not, and my wife was in total control of everything, so I didn't know anything anyway.
That's the right answer.
Thank you.
I guess the answer to this question, it depends on the decision maker. So, we have about 5 more minutes before you start going to the Hmong Learning Center again. So you can grab another cup of coffee or glass of water. So we would like to start again at 1:30, the next session. Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone.